Your resume. This is probably going to be one of the most important chapters because your resume is going to be what gets you the interview. So we want your resume to be in the top 5% of resumes. And before we get into this, I've attached my resume to this video, so you can pause it now, pull up my resume, and that way you could kind of compare my resume to what I'm saying while we follow along to make sure you have a killer resume. The first thing we're going to discuss is the format. Ultimately, you want to be conservative with your resume. I've seen a lot of really out there resumes that have a ton of colors, have a ton of designs, all of that. The purpose of the resume is, yeah, those ones could help you stand out, but they could also help you get rejected from the interview. The auto scanners for the resumes did not be able to read those and would reject you right away. And ultimately, recruiters' eyes just aren't ready for those resumes. So if they just see something that's super dynamic, it might throw them off. And we don't want that to happen. Ultimately, we want to play it conservative with our resume template because if you have a really cool resume template, that most likely is not going to get you the interview. Your experience is what gets you the interview. So a really fancy template might cost you the interview, but it's not going to get it for you. So that's why we want to keep our template pretty simple, and that way we can have a conservative strategy. So we want this template to be easy to read, nothing smaller than 12-point font. Don't try and fit everything on your resume. We want minimal color, not too much. If you look at my resume, it has a bit. I think that makes it look really nice and makes some parts stand out more than others, but keep it minimal to color. And the last few things is you want to keep that standard template that a lot of people use. Mine's a bit unique. I think mine is kind of almost the cusp of how much you want to push the bar in terms of uniqueness. One of the things I do is I have 2 columns at the top, one my education, courses, and my about me section. That's not overwhelming. The thing you want to avoid with the 2 column structure is don't do 2 columns the entire way down. That's going to be too much. The interviewer's not going to be which part to read first. So definitely try to avoid the 2 column structure and just keep 1 column. Again, we just want to keep our format simple as possible. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is ultimately the content and the structure of what we include. So at the top, you should have your name, phone number, email. You don't necessarily need your address. Some people like to include that. And the core parts of your resume that are absolutely required is I want you to include your education, your experience, and then your skills at the bottom. And these could be programming languages, tools that you're a part of. Some optional sections that people like to include are volunteer experience, extracurriculars, projects, leadership. Those are things you don't have to have, but are nice to have. Additionally, another optional people that I like to include, and my friend who runs a recruiting company suggests to me, is if you look at my resume, I have an about me section. And ultimately the purpose of that section is for me to connect with my interviewer. So a lot of times when I've gone to interview, and I've talked about this before, is my interviewer reads my resume and they're like, oh, like I see you're an Eagle Scout. So am I. Then we talk about being Eagle Scouts together for 20 minutes. And that's really what that section's there for. It's for me to basically find commonalities with my interviewer, but also just kind of show my uniqueness, show how I'm different. Instead of being the person who goes to University of Michigan who's interested in product management, I'm the person who goes to University of Michigan who's a sponsored snowboarder who did stand-up comedy and ran a marathon. Like, you create that uniqueness about you, and also all of those things really communicate something different about you. It shows like snowboarding shows I'm competitive, stand-up shows I can speak in front of people. So you can do that, but also like my friend who got Facebook RPM literally has on his resume, avid snow globe collector. I have over 100 snow globes. So those are things. It's just really to show that you're unique. So now I want to talk about when we order our experiences. So what I mean by that is what place kind of everything goes in terms of your resume. For particular experiences, they should be ordered in chronological should be a list. So the top should be your most recent, then before that, and so on. And that's how your experience list. But for the overall flow, you see some people have education at the bottom, some at the top. So this is my suggestion. The recruiter that reads your resume is going to read it from top down. So they're going to read everything at the top first. You want the things that are most impressive and most likely to get you the interview at the top. I hate to say this, but people that go to top schools most likely have a better chance. So if you go to Harvard, Stanford, or any top 20 school, education should be at the top. But let's say you go to a really small school that isn't really well known, but you did a software engineering internship at Facebook, Microsoft, or Google. Then you're going to want to put your experience on top of your school. So ultimately, the way you should structure your entire resume is basically what's the most important and what's going to get the interviewer's attention. Sometimes it makes sense. I mean, for me, one of the reasons I included something like my courses is because I was afraid that being in a business school, I was going to get written off for all the CS programs. So the reason I included the top was so right off the bat, they would establish my credibility as someone who was technical. And then if you look at my About Me, I also have that line about me creating my own software there. Everything on my resume is strategically placed. And that's also why my business is at the very top of my resume, because that was my best experience to land my interviewers. So when you're ordering things, outside experience, that should be chronological. It should be what's the most impressive and what's most likely to get you the interviews. So now talking about strictly the content of how you write the bullets for experiences. So if you go to business school, the way they teach you to write the resumes is established email chain to send reports to 1,000 people weekly on a regular basis, which improved the company's overall oversight on what's going on in the ecosystem. And they just tell you to throw in all these buzzwords and make these really crazy sentences and overcomplicate things and make things more impressive than they actually are. But recruiters and interviewers see through that bullshit. Like if you try and just hype up something when it's just, I just sent weekly emails, it doesn't matter. You should just be straight and to the point. If you look at my resume, there's a bullet there that basically says, sold company for 2 times net profit, paid off college tuition. That bullet point used to be 2 lines long. And then my friend who runs his recruiting company literally laughed at me and was just like, Philip, this is the most impressive in your bullet point on your resume. Say sold company, paid off tuition. That's all they need to know. Like they don't care about all these extra words. So with that being said, you want to just be straight to the point. You don't want bullshitty bullets. You don't want it to be full of fluff. You just want straight, concise, to the point bullets that are clear and easy to understand. The other type of bullets you want are action then results. So you don't want to write on your resume responsible for XYZ. No one cares about what you're responsible for, and ultimately it's going to be obvious if you write good action result bullets. You want things that are, for example, I did X, which created Y. I cut the cost down of shipping for X company, which resulted in them saving $10 million a year. Those are the bullets you want. Very simple, concise ones that are, did A, resulted in B. And I've included my resume on this so you can look at the way I wrote my bullets. And then I've also gone through and I curated some additional content on resumes that I've included in the attached document. But follow these results and hopefully you're going to write your killer resume.